Welcome to Uncharted Entrepreneurship, the show that brings you stories of trailblazing entrepreneurs. Get inside access to the minds of founders, partners, and visionaries. See how they find opportunity in challenges and take bold risks. They think big, act boldly, and make a real difference. Learn how they're shaping the future and making the world a better place. Get inspired to take action, believe in yourself, and ignite your own journey. Make your mark. Sponsored by EO Minnesota. Uncharted Entrepreneurship is a production of Content Basis, LLC. Copyright 2024. Subscribe and download today wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to this episode of Uncharted Entrepreneurship. Today I have Luis Garcia. He is the president of PEAT. Luis, go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day role, and tell us one of your passions in life.
Okay, well, thank you, Brent, for having me. So, yes, I'm president of PEAT, and PEAT is a AI-powered learning platform. What that means is that we provide tools for growing organizations to create training programs. And small organizations, medium-sized organizations, let's say in the low hundreds, usually when they're growing, they start facing the problem that you no longer can shadow to learn for new employees and for product knowledge and things like that. And then they start relying on their experts and functional managers and leaders to become trainers. And they realize that it's a lot harder than they thought. And so we're creating training for content for training. The process of translating expertise into training is complex, and usually you have to pay people to do that. Have training departments. Smaller companies can really do that. So our software can do that 20 times faster than the traditional methods. And so a company that doesn't have a training department can have one out of the box, so to speak, from our software. My personal journey, I came from the world of technology and education, and started my career as an engineer, and fell off into a higher education almost by accident in the early 2000s, when there was that one period that only people that are older like me remember, that one time that technology actually went through a slow period. And so I joined a university, and they wanted to create an online university, and because it was a traditional campus university, and they hired me to do that because I knew how to make websites. And it been a very great journey. So I've been in education technology for 20 years. I built a very large, fast-growing online university that today has 18,000 students. And in that process, I learned the challenges of creating content for training. Because when you come from traditional education, if people are sitting in the classroom and the educator is a good communicator, engages with you, then people feel they're being educated. But when you remove that, and now you got to go online and get materials from a website called Learning Management System, then these materials really matter. So I had to create a department to create the materials for translating the courses from campus to online and all that. So I'm very familiar with this problem. And the other problem I'm really familiar with is the evaluation of learning, what we call assessment. And how do you know that the person actually learned? And so we use tests traditionally, and that's actually a very bad way to assess learning. And the best way is to really personalize the engagement with the learner, and ask questions, inquire, and go through a train of thoughts, simulate situations. A test is the worst situation because it doesn't exist in the real world. And you don't go into a room, don't ask anyone, can only answer in 2 hours. That is a very artificial situation. So it's better to do actual simulations of real world. So that's the other problem we wanted to solve at PEAT. So we have tools that simulate situations and simulating structure as well, to ask questions personalized to each learner, and to do learning assessment at scale. So content development and assessment of learning is what we do.
Wow, that's really good, and I like the way that you approach that. How about passions? What do you have a passion outside of what you do for
My
work?
biggest passion is my family. I have two kids, and they're getting older now. I have one kid in college and the other one about to go. And I've been married for 28 years, and so I put a lot of value in my family. But apart to that, my two passions are sports and music. And I run, I swim, and I play guitar.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're very similar. I was a programmer in my past life.
There
I
you
run,
go.
I swim, I bike. I play piano. I don't play guitar, but
I
we're
used to
pretty
play
close.
piano. I don't play piano anymore. But yeah, fantastic. We're so similar.
Yeah.
And
Funny.
do you do like open water swim?
Yeah. Mainly open water.
Yeah, I love
We
that too.
yeah. I've done, last year I did Point de la Pointe, which is from Bayfield, Wisconsin to Madeline Island, so it's across Lake Superior. That was my most scary swim, but we winter in Hawaii, we winter in Kona, and I swim at the in the ocean every day there. It's fantastic. And then we
What was
summer.
that distance that you did in Wisconsin?
Oh, it was 2.5 miles. And I'm a terrible swimmer. My daughter swam with me. She finished in an hour, and I finished in an hour and 40 minutes.
So in my 40s I did 10Ks, so 6 miles
That's
races.
crazy.
And, but my most memorable is the Bay of San Francisco, which it was only like a mile or so from the island of Alcatraz into the beach. You should do that one. It's pretty amazing to swim that bay.
Yeah, that's definitely on my bucket list. That's Escape from Alcatraz.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Well, we can talk about that offline. We don't want to bore everybody with sports talks, but thank you. Before we get started, though, I'm going to tell you a joke, and it's guaranteed to be a very poor joke. All you have to do is give me a rating 1 through 5. So here we go. It's called the Free Joke Project. So here we go. Socks should be at least 12 inches long so they can cover a foot.
That's clever. I like it. I'll give it a 3.
Okay, thank you. I would have given it a 2, but I appreciate you being so generous. All right, so I love the journey. I like what you said about taking a test, because I used to be in the Magento community, which is a software platform, and I always participated in the educational process in terms of being a subject matter expert. And they went from just doing an ABCD type of test to learn to be certified on Magento to more of an interactive test where you had to give answers and give code related problem or give answers to code related problems. And I know the goal was always to make it non-memorizable, right? And I think what you're kind of keying in on, and unfortunately you only had 2 hours to complete the test, so it wasn't real, but I know they had to figure out some way to do a certification. I kind of want to go backwards from your story and start with that part of it on how you work with students to, or even not students, but how you work with businesses to ensure that they know what they've learned.
Yeah, so because I come from that world, I know there's a very difficult problem to solve at scale. So a better way of assessment could be project-based learning. So you instead of asking people to answer a test, you ask them to do a project, and that that's not something that you memorize and you exercise. So it's a better way of assessment, but it's also very difficult to scale because you need an expert on the other side to kind of assess the project. So it's a very complicated a problem. Usually in education, we have, and time is fixed. You know how long people are sitting down there or taking the course, but learning is variable. So the same person, two different people in the same classroom, virtual or physical, you know that how long they were staying there, but they could have learned, mastered the material at much different levels. So in the education, there has been these nagging questions for decades now. So how do we make it the other way around? How do we make it the learning to be fixed, so everybody masters the material, and the time variable, and so some people may take less, and some people may take more, and again, the only way to do that is to have enough experts to engage and spend enough time with each learner to do that, and it's just not scalable, not even in the classroom. So, but with AI, you can, and you can train an AI to be the expert, and then have a conversation with the learner, and they can do that hundreds of conversations at the same time because it's a machine doing it. It's basically no limitation on that end. But with that same knowledge that you have, and by the way, we get this knowledge because we created the materials to make the course. So we have a knowledge base that is created by the company. And that's why I tell you a couple of use cases. We have a retailer that has a social component to what they do. They sell liquor, they say wine. And so when people buy from them, they can choose a cause that they want part of their purchase to go to. And so it's very rooted in their culture to do this. So when they bring new associates, they want to make sure that that's at the front of every customer interaction. So we programmed the simulation engine to come and train the associate. Is okay, here comes Luis. He bought this wine last time, and he is interested in supporting our troops. So you have to welcome that person with, "Hi, Luis, welcome back. Ever since last time, your contribution went to do this, and what do we want to do today?" And um, so, do you want to continue with your purchase today to support this cause, or you want to support another one, animal shelter, whatever it is? They have so training that and with data associate will require a senior associate to be with them one-on-one doing that kind of training, so we can simulate that situation, and then we'll give them the transcripts to the leaders if they want to do more one-on-one follow-up, but at least they don't have to do that. So we have a bank that is using our simulation engine to train the tellers, and with all the different situations that can come up on the window. And some of them are very usual, but then there's that 5% that is very unusual that they have to start calling people to ask. We can get those conversations in there. Technical teams are using it to train on tech stack. And you welcome a new programmer, and you're not going to teach them how to program, but there are things the way you do it in your team that are special to how you do depending on what your tech stack is. So we can, instead of putting them to do a test, they can still do the test, but do it personalized based on their role and what you need them to do.
Yeah, that's good. I think in terms of AI, like what you said earlier about the technical learning, that seems to be one of the best applications or one of the biggest applications for AI besides generative AI. But the idea that you can have something assist you in helping your job go better, let's just say, that's a great application of how that goes. Do you find that you get a little resistance from some clients who don't quite trust the AI yet?
No, if they don't trust AI, they're probably not our customers. So the customers that come to us are very eager to bring AI into their training, and they have seen how we can assist them in other parts of organizations, and sometimes they only have a training problem, and we just happen to be the solution, and AI is the power of that, so they don't really mind. But we have seen some customers that they are skeptical of AI, they want to bring it into the organization, and they don't become customers. But it is a problem because it will happen no matter what. It will happen with us or with somebody else, but AI is going to your organization whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's very true. One issue that I've seen that others have talked about in terms of using private AIs or an AI to train is right now the acceleration of what's happening within the AI space is so rapid that one version to the next often breaks your training material that's going into the AI. And because that trajectory is so fast going up, it's sometimes harder to keep up. And do you struggle with wanting to go with the latest, but then kind of holding back and staying, just say, with whatever GPT-4, and when you could
Yes.
now go to this 0.1 preview, things like that?
That's a really good question. So when people are doing it themselves, you can today write a custom GPT for yourself, and you're right, you will, and that custom GPT could, first of all, it's getting your information and making it public, so that's a problem, unless you have a private one. And I like to say to our customers, we take that problem away from you because you're not doing the one doing the custom GPT. Our platform is agnostic to the LLM. We'll try to make it as agnostic as possible from the LLM. So we're orchestrating. We have our own AI that is trained as an instructional designer. Instructional designer is the person that knows how to translate knowledge into training materials. So what we do is try to find the right algorithm for the right task. And in that journey, sometimes the algorithm changes and evolves. And so we take care of that one particular part, but we're not using one algorithm for everything. So we use different depending on the task that we're trying.
Yeah, I think from a business flow standpoint, that is an underpinning that people don't understand, especially when you're trying to do it at scale. If you're going to use Llama, there's a new version that's for 405 billion parameters or something like that.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that people don't understand from the back end, and that you're constantly iterating and making it better.
Yes.
Let's talk about your business though, because I do have a friend who does this for a living, but with real humans, right? And they have a $6 million business for just training for exactly what you do. Is there a threat to that type of business where they are doing that custom training for larger corporations where maybe they wouldn't need that trainer anymore?
I would say this today we target companies between 50 to 500 precisely because it's expensive. So in the market, only companies over 1,000 employees or so will have the resources to either create their learning department or hire a company like your friend and do that. But a company that is 200 people don't have $500,000, $1 million a year to do that. They may have it, but they're not going to apply it to this. So that's why we target that particular market. We don't think anybody's really targeting them and try to solve that solution because it's expensive to do courses. And the closest it gets if you use one of the biggest providers like Coursera or something like that. And there's relatively inexpensive to license from them, but you can't get an onboarding course of your company from Coursera. You can't do that. It's not customized to you. So that's what we can do. And I do customization of courses at a very low cost. So to answer your question, I don't think it's a threat today because we're not really trying to unseat. The market is very, very large in the target that we want to go after. And if I was those companies, I would be using AI to increase my margins. And I do think the threat will be in the future that people that hire those companies are going to realize that they can get the same. And it's not the same today. The quality of production value, if you will, is not the same. So they still have that edge. But that will be reduced over time. And maybe their prices are going to start coming down. Fully replace them? I don't know. It's hard to tell right now.
Yeah, I think so. I have a new company that we do generative AI, but we have humans that edit it, right? We have sort of people that always want to look for it, and I always say that when you put something for sale, Google is helping you get somebody to buy it, but ChatGPT is never going to buy it, right? So at the end of the day, a human, and in your case, and at the end of the day, a human has to get trained. How much? I guess my question now is how much of the human interaction is involved in your process to ensure that it's always correct?
Actually, I'm so glad you bring that up. A lot. Actually, we have to rely on the expert to curate, to give us the direction, the vision. In a world where anybody can create content, what really matters is the point of view of the expert. And so we try to capture that as much as possible. So nothing goes directly to a learner without having been to an approval process from an administrator that usually is an expert in what we're trying to create. So they have the power of doing that. We also capture their voice because that's part of the personalization. Brent is the expert in that. And right now, we don't have to put him on the microphone for hours and hours and hours doing takes on the content of a course. We'll clone your voice, and then when we generated those courses automatically, or in an automated process, I would say that instead of automatically, and we'll use your voice for that. So the learner will hear from you. But nothing goes to a learner without having been approved by an expert first. So we're really just assisting the expert, not replacing it.
I think a lot of times people think that AI is going to do everything for them from end to end, and they forget the step of, hey, is this actually readable? No matter what you're going to do, it's never going to be. I mean, I guess, again, we go back to the point that this is meant for humans to, in your case, humans to learn. and we need to make sure that it's learnable and that you need to learn it, right? It's relevant to who it is. Subject matter expert is such an important part of that. The other part is I think that people do make the mistake, and I know that there's LMS, and I think you're not. Would you classify yourself as a learning management platform?
We have a learning management system as part of our solution, but I
Yeah.
don't call us an LMS company because it's not our focus.
Okay. Well,
But the courses have to go somewhere, and
yeah.
for people to take them, and they do land in a CA.
Yeah, I think if you let's just say that there's somebody that has sort of this sort of all AI LMS, and they make the mistake of just putting it out there as a done course, which I think in generative AI right now, writing a blog post, so many people make the mistake of copy and paste from ChatGPT and send without editing it. I do that myself often when I'm looking for a social post and I'm thinking, oh, it's only 140 characters. Who cares, right? And then you realize if it said something really silly. From a professional standpoint, that's worse, right? You're now putting your reputation out there, and it just goes back to what you said earlier, having that subject matter expert. Going back even, let's take a step back then from your journey. How did you decide to start, or how did you decide to get involved with PEAT, and how did that journey happen?
So it's a good story. I have a co-founder, and he is a very well-known tech entrepreneur here in the Orlando area. He has built several companies, exited them, and his last company went unicorn, very successful fintech company here. But in his last couple of years in that company, they acquired other companies, and that they needed to integrate all these new people into their organization. And he took it upon himself to create a center of excellence and do this thing, create courses and all that. And he realized how hard it was, and what he thought it was going to take him a couple of months, it took him six to 8 months. He had to hire instructional designers. He said it was thousands of man hours, and so when he exited his company, he said, "This is a very interesting problem to solve." We have met and we have been friends from the local tech ecosystem here, and he knew that I was, a higher education. I had working at tech for a very long time, so we went out to lunch, and he told me, "I'm thinking about doing this. Would you help me with that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love to. I think that it will be really great to use AI to solve some of these problems that I know exist." And so we joined forces last summer, and we got started.
That's awesome. I have a question just about cultural aspects. And in my previous life, I ran a company where we had an office in Mexico City. We have offices in Bolivia, and the culture between all those different areas was so different. Do you find it difficult to sort of engage in the Latin American culture compared to the US culture? And I'm assuming you're probably in Europe as well, just making making it work in all the different areas of the world, or right now are you just concentrating on the United States?
So most of our customers are in the US. We do have a customer in Latin America. So it was the first time that we were actually using our platform to develop courses in Spanish. And I have a lot of experience in multi-language development. That's another difficult problem to solve. And usually, for you to have a platform that's multi-platform, multi-language, that has to be thought out from the very beginning. It's really hard to say if you have a SaaS platform and say, "Now I'm going to make it in Spanish." You realize, like, if you haven't thought about that from the very beginning, that's a very difficult thing to do. And because we use large language models, in theory they can create in several languages, but we never had actually tried it. And we got a customer from Latin America wanting to do it in Spanish, and then all those questions starting arising. Okay, so we're gonna have the voice. Okay, is that gonna be with a Mexican accent, or is it gonna be with an Argentinian accent, or is it gonna be a neutral accent? And so the person provided us the colonial voice, and then there was a lot of challenges into finding the right tone and all that. So it was Not to mention the QA portion. We had to then hire somebody in Latin America to do the QA of the courses, and beyond the curation of the courses, just making sure that every word is properly pronounced properly, and the output was generic enough for all Latin America. So yes, it is a challenge, and I've worked a lot. I worked in different countries before, and so I know about some of this, and they continue to apply when you put technology in front of it. AI is not going to make it easier. What it makes it easier is that we're still creating content faster than we would otherwise, and that's great. But there was a lot more nuances to it.
I want to talk about some specific applications, and I also saw that you have a fractional business where you help fractional. I just read about it on your LinkedIn, but when I exited the company that I was at, I took on a role as a fractional CTO, and I got to learn more about private equity and how that works, and then in larger scale. What if I were to say to this company as an advisor, hey, that you could use this process, and they have 200 employees, if you could use this process for your onboarding, for sales training, is there specific areas where you see, let's say, low-hanging fruit in companies that don't have anything implemented in terms of any internal training?
Yeah. So experience tells me that usually when you start a training department, and the first place that they go is onboarding, because you want to. There's no training department in the world that feels like they are doing their best, or they're maximizing, because there's always more needs, and so you always want to say, well, what can I do that will touch everybody? It's onboarding it. So that's usually the first thing that a learning department starts, and then the second thing that they usually do is sales training or product training, because that's the thing, is very, very important for the business. So I thought that those were going to be the use cases that we will have to overcome, but they have not been. And we have been approached for very niche cases. In earlier in our journey, we signed on with sports teams and sports venues here in the Orlando area, and their problem was that they have 50 or 60 employees that work at the venue, but on game day or event game day, they have 200 of people that come in only to work on the event. And training those people was very challenging, and because you cannot all get them at the same time. If you do it at the beginning of the season, they likely change over the season. So really they kind of live with this problem that, okay, I hope it goes well. And creating a training department for that is not cost effective, and because of the amount of retraining you will have. So our tool fit perfectly into that particular problem, because we can create the content fast, we can get it to everyone, and we can retrain very easily. And that's a problem we never knew that we will have to solve. And then we kept signing more venues because they had the same problem, and it's very customized to them. And so the head of security and safety will say, they don't know anything about safety and security. I have all my processes here, and all I can do is give it to them and hope they read it. And I mark them in a list, like I gave it to Brent. So we took that manual, turned it into a course, synthesized his voice, and now he's the voice. They hear directly from the head of security and safety in a course for their level and the things that they need to know. And then not only can mark them in a list that they got the process, they mark them in a list that they actually took a course and learned. And so that was a use case that we were not expecting at all. Right now, we're just signing a university. We have not targeted universities for our tool, because higher education has particular needs that we really for corporate training. But universities do have staff training that you have to train your people, especially in the areas of financial aid and admissions. Those are complicated jobs. I know that firsthand because I work on that in that problem myself. When you hire a financial aid advisor, it takes months of training before that person is capable of helping a potential student with a financial aid packaging. So I knew if back then, when I was growing the online university, I would have a tool like PEAT, I would have cut that time in half, or even 75%. And that's real money of resources that when you're paying a salary while the person is being trained. Trade school, a higher education trade school recently approached us, and I said, yeah, I know exactly your problem. And we offer them, and they're going to use it for that kind of thing. So it's not really onboarding new employees, it's regulation training. So we just never know how people are going to use your tool.
Yeah, that's good. Where do you see this going in the next 5 years? Where do you see your industry going to?
What is exciting is that I think that in our target market, training is something, or lack of training or bad training is something that companies just live with. They don't think they can solve them. They just keep stumbling on it. And some people survive and some people don't. I'm just excited to provide a tool that can help them and grow. If that means that some of them become very large organizations and we grow with them and we end up being an ICP of thousands of employees, then great. But I think what's exciting right now is that there are hundreds of thousands of companies that can use our product.
Luis, we have a few minutes left as I close out. I give everybody a chance to do a shameless plug about anything they'd like. But before I do that, I forgot to ask you, where did the name PEAT come from? I'm interested in that. What does that mean?
Well, actually, PEAT stands for, and it's behind me, in personalized education, training, and enrichment. And we wanted to have a four-letter word that will be memorable and will stand for our values, which is start with personalized education and training. And so that's where it came from.
That's
and
good.
With that, with my shameless plug, then I go directly into that. We acquired the PEAT.com domain. So it's very easy for people to go. So it's PEATE.com. And you go there and you can read about us and you can request a demo, and we'll happily go and do a demo for you. And hopefully we can help you with your training.
That's great. Yeah. And I've been on the website. You have a lot of, you've got a nice intro video or a video that kind of explains it. And there's a lot of FAQs and lots of information.
Yes.
And I'll make sure I get those into the show notes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Luis Garcia, it's been such a great conversation and very interesting. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Uncharted Entrepreneurship is a production of Content Basis LLC. Copyright 2023. You can find more award-winning content at contentbasis.io. And that wraps up the latest edition of Uncharted Entrepreneurship. Bold tales from entrepreneurial trailblazers. I'm your host, Brent Peterson, signing off after an incredible fireside chat with one of our intrepid trailblazing guests. Their first-hand perspective on conquering the unexplored wilds of business is just a taste of the rare wisdom you'll discover from pioneering entrepreneurs on this show. I also invite you to join me each week for insider commentary on the startup scene and digital marketing landscape on my Talk Commerce podcast. You can find Talk Commerce wherever you download podcasts or go to talk-commerce.com. I'd be grateful if you left a review and rating for Uncharted Entrepreneurship to help more bold founders find their way to game-changing insights that empower ventures to transform communities. This is your host, Brent Peterson, signing off for now. I'll see you around the virtual campfire next episode as we embark on another adventure into the great entrepreneurial unknown.